silly love fables. We'll see through the illusions of love to find the treasure in being forever friends. Hello everyone, happy Thursday. It is Sharla Kornegay coming live to you guys with another Forever Friends Academy live episode. How is everyone doing this Thursday, lovely Thursday evening? As always, happy to be on here with you guys for another, hopefully, great conversation. And, good episode. Let me just introduce myself just in case there is someone new coming on tonight's episode, or if you're catching the replay and you're new. My name is Sharla Kornegay, aka Sharla K. I am an author, a recording artist, creator of Interask Coaching and Forever Friends Academy, which is the same name of my podcast. Welcome, welcome. I talk about all relationship topics and focus on presenting fundamental principles that you can use to build your relationship and help you to grow whatever the dynamic of the relationship is, grow together through the test of time and change. So welcome. As an artist, if you want to check out my music, I go by Sharla K when I'm on stage. Feel free to Google my name or go on Spotify, iTunes, whatever your music platform of choice. You will find my music there, and feel free to peruse my music catalog so far. Hopefully you'll find something you like. I am working on new music, and just while I'm saying that, I see Justin in the building. Hi, Justin. How are you? I literally listened to the beat that you sent me all day. Trying to fine tune and get it exactly perfect. So that is one of the new songs that I'm working on, titled Just the Way You Are. So hopefully I have a, onslaught of new songs to bring out to you guys. So let's definitely get into tonight's conversation. We had a really good conversation. I feel like I say that all the time. Maybe I'm just biased to you guys. I don't know. But the conversations are always enriching. You guys take your time out to conversate with me and type and etc. But we were talking about the new look and journey of single motherhood. And on the last episode, I used Ebony K. Williams and her recent, rolling it out on social media that she was taking the journey of single motherhood by choice because she froze her eggs and she, was successful in implanting an embryo, and now she's pregnant with her daughter. So on the last podcast, we were talking about how, that is something that is going on now often, especially women who are in higher status, professional women who have wealth and resources are now not wanting to let their window of fertility expire and now taking on the journey of motherhood by themselves. So we talked about it, whether, of course, the women who were on with me, I asked them would that be a journey that they would take, whether her going to choose to take on motherhood by herself, is that a selfish act or is that a selfless act, just because the process of motherhood tends to be looked at as being just a selfless all in of itself. So it was a great conversation, lots of great feedback from all the people who were on, and I kind of wanted to continue somewhat that conversation tonight, but use a different example tonight to see what your thoughts are. And welcome, Just Be Empowered. How are you? Thank you. Thank you, Justin. He says we're going to have an amazing conversation tonight. I hope so. I think so. We'll see. So let's get to it. I'm going to give you guys the question of tonight, and I'm sure if you're on the different platforms, you might have saw the statement that I put. And the question for tonight is it better or more fulfilling to be family-oriented or career-oriented? Question for tonight is it better to be family-oriented, or more fulfilling to be family-oriented or career-oriented? So that's the question for tonight. And I bring it up because I'm going to show you guys a clip, which maybe some of you guys have heard about it already. I'm going to show a clip from a football player called Harrison Butker. I hope I'm saying his name right. He plays for the Kansas City Chiefs. He is the place kicker for them, and he recently went viral for a commencement speech that he made. I believe it was at Benedictine College. So it is, I believe, either a Catholic or a faith-based university. So just to give it context with the speech that he was making, but there were a lot, plenty of pushback for some of the things that he stated in the speech. The things that I will, in the clip the little short snippet that I will show you tonight is the focus in the area of the speech where he said to the graduates that are there, and specifically took time out to talk to the women graduates, and basically, told them congratulations for all their hard work, for going through, of course, all of their academics to get to this point. And he also said in the speech that, many of you guys might, be, I guess, happy and excited about what the future holds and the careers or the professions that you may enter. But he said in the speech that he believes that women were sold a lot, so some of the most diabolical lies when it comes to what affords them fulfillment. And he began to say, but I can see that maybe some of you will be more excited about starting your families, basically the marriages that you may have and the children that you may have in the future. So that is where the pushback came from a lot of people who felt that, one, either it was inappropriate to say that at a graduation when, the women have done their due diligence to gain their academic credentials to then go out into, their profession or their expertise. So I'm going to show a little clip for you guys right now, just so that you can get the full, well, it won't be the full commencement speech, but you will at least get the full snippet of that particular part of the speech where he talks to women. And I want to know what your thoughts are. And I want, of course, to tie it in with the question that I asked tonight, which is, what do you think? Do you think that it's better to be a person who's family oriented, or a person who's career oriented or career driven? What, which pathway do you think offers a more fulfilling life for people? And of course, specifically, he's talking to women in this clip, but I definitely would like to, be for both men and women, right? Of course, definitely women when it comes to, which was the central point of his statement, our ability and our capacity in the most optimal state to have children and do family planning and build a life of legacy if we want to have a natural childbirth in with the, the lowest risk of complications is in our early 20s, right? To do that. Of course, there are many things that are, increasing a woman's ability to have children at later ages. But let's be very clear in understanding that to have a child and to the process is miraculous, first of all, for a woman to be able to, become pregnant and then, thankfully and prayerfully be able to hold that child and then give, birth to that child or many children thereafter. It's a uncertain and uncontrollable process, right? Of course, you can do what you can do to hopefully, exercise, eat right, things like that. But it really is something that is uncontrollable, and you really pray and hope and wish for the best. So it is something that you want to, when you're planning and thinking about it, want to give yourself the best advantage, right? Which youthfulness gives a woman her best advantage in that way, just because of science, right? Not just opinion, science as far as the quality of the eggs and things like that. So even though we have things like IVF and being able to freeze your eggs, the normative biological process is risky. So now when you add all of these other factors, it's a risk. And it also is a lot more taxing on the body, the process for the woman. So with all that being said, I'm curious to see what you guys' thoughts are in general, whether both men and women, is it better to be family oriented as far or career oriented to have a more meaningful and fulfilling life, as well as if you can just think of in the context of the statement that he's saying and directing it mainly towards women because of some of the things that I've just stated. And these women usually, when you graduate, unless you've gone into college at an earlier age, which some people do, but most of the time you get your at least your BA around about 22, 23. And so those are your prime years. So I'm going to stop talking and I'm going to play the clip for you guys. And you guys tell me what your thoughts are and what you think. Okay?
I don't see what the big crime is. I really don't.
Harrison Butker, one of the players for the Kansas City Chiefs, Super Bowl winning Kansas City Chiefs, he gave a commencement speech and he basically just said some kind of basic stuff about being a mother, raising a family, being a decent person, and how that's kind of better than perhaps the bill of goods that so many women have been sold.
For the ladies present today, congratulations on an amazing accomplishment. You should be proud of all that you have achieved to this point in your young lives. I want to speak directly to you briefly because I think it is you, the women, who have had the most diabolical lies told to you. How many of you are sitting here now, about to cross this stage, and are thinking about all the promotions and titles you are going to get in your career? Some of you may go on to lead successful careers in the world, but I would venture to guess that the majority of you are most excited about your marriage and the children you will bring into this world.
I think you were probably watching that going, Dave, what, that caused outrage? But yes, it did, because he basically said to women, oh, there could be something more important than just working your way up the corporate ladder, more important than just getting the next promotion or the next raise or something else. Like, everyone knows that that would basically be the better way of doing things. And then this is again where it puts, and now we're going to go back to Bill Maher for a second on his show, because this is again where it would put even Bill Maher, who is an atheist, who is a lifelong bachelor, who does not like children. Here he is analyzing the speech. And again, the liberal, sane position is to understand that the Catholic guy talking about family is actually kind of right.
He said, some of you, talking to the women here, some of you may go on to lead successful careers in the world. Okay, that seems fairly modern. But I would venture to guess that the majority of you are most excited about your marriage and the children you will bring into this world. I don't see what the big crime is. I really don't. And I think this is part of the problem people have with the left, is that lots of people in this country are like this. Like he's saying, some of you may go on to lead successful careers, but a lot of you are excited about this other way that everybody used to be. And now can't that just be a choice too? And I feel like they feel very put upon, like there's only one way to be a good person, and that's to get an advanced degree from one of those asshole factories like Harvard.
Asshole factories, right, exactly. The only way you can become a good person is if you go to Harvard, get $300,000 into debt, and become a Hamas supporter on the other side. So again, I'm showing you that because Bill gets it. So that's the good news there. The average liberal sees that, knows these are inherent truths that we all know.
All right, so that is the clip, folks. You guys let me know what your thoughts are. As I stated before, I would love to know your thoughts on the clip based on kind of, do you think, right? Of course, he's doing this at a college. Some of the arguments were that he's doing it at a college graduation where, right, the women specifically have put in their due diligence and their time to get their academic, right, credentials to then, of course, use that degree and go out into the world and go into their profession. And at the ceremony, he's telling them that, I would, assume that a lot of you are looking forward to going into your professional careers, but I can also probably assume that most of you are more excited about the marriage that you have and the children that you will birth, and the family that you will have in the future. So a lot of people are saying, not the right time, even if he's saying the right message, it's not the right event to do that at, because it almost kind of invalidates, all of the work, and the process of attaining their education to go out and be in the workforce and go into their career. And then the other argument, of course, is, doing this is the idea of placing on women to prioritize family over career, something that, of course, which a lot of feminists, right, like Chelsea Handler and other people gave pushback because of that, because, right, that's kind of against what they push, right? They push that women have fair equal terrain in the workforce and things like that, and push for women to prioritize their careers over family, right? So we have like these two spectrums, and I don't know if any of you guys have checked it out, whether it's on TikTok or YouTube. You have the whole Tradwives, which is short for traditional wives, versus, right, modern, the modern woman or feminist, where there is so much so much arguments that are against perpetuating the idea of women fulfilling more traditional roles, or going back to fulfilling more traditional household roles and focusing on family instead of their career. So I definitely want to know what your thoughts are. Hey, Emily, I just played a clip. You missed the clip, but we are talking about Harrison Butker. He is on he plays for the Kansas Chiefs, and he he recently went viral over a commencement speech at a college, Benedictine college, where he said a lot of things, but the things that I'm focusing on tonight is he said specifically to the women at the ceremony that, he feels that women have been sold some of the most diabolical lies when it comes to what they should pursue and what will give them the most meaning out of life. And he said, I'm sure many of you are excited about, using the education that you've acquired to go into your right area of expertise and start your career and, get your accolades and accomplishments in whatever profession it is that you're choosing to go into. But I'm sure that most of you are excited about the marriage that you will enter, as well as the future children that you will have and the family that you will create. And that it is important to kind of focus on and put, I guess, the rightful honor to motherhood and being a homemaker, and not making that seem like it's a second-class citizen, or that it's not a very vital or important role, not only in the family, but also, right, in society. So that's what we're talking about, and I'm asking the question. I started off with at the top of the podcast, asking the question, is it better to be family-oriented or career-oriented? Which, pathway do you think will give you the most meaningfulness or fulfillment out of life? So that's what we've been talking about, and that is the question that I put out for tonight. And the quote that I want to present to you guys tonight is really not a quote that I can give you a person who stated it. It's really a comment that I saw under one of the podcasts that I listen to from time to time. And the comment that the person made was that they said that feminism is right in that you can have it all, but they just got the order wrong, basically, So if I could paraphrase that statement into a quote, it would be, in life you can have it all, but you have to build in the proper order, right? In life you can have it all, maybe not all at once, but you do have to build in the proper order. So in life you can have it all if you build your life in the proper order. So I guess going into the question that we have tonight, in the context of his statement in his speech, do you think would that be the proper order, to be family focused and then still be able to to grow in your profession and still go out into the world? I will never forget, for me, I got married very well, I guess it's young considered now in our day and age, because there's so many people who are getting married later in their 30s. I got married in very early 20s, and that's not even really, there's not a lot of women who are doing that in modern day society. So matter of fact, I got married even before I finished my degree. I actually got married and I still had 2 years left to do my degree. And I will never forget, I was pregnant with my first daughter before I graduated. Like my last year of graduating, that's when I was pregnant with my first daughter. And I remember in that transition, and I've told you guys this story before, that I had an opportunity. Like, I've always loved performing arts, but the people, in my inner circle advised, just in case you don't make money out of the arts. And so I picked communication studies because I felt like I can still study stage presence and being articulation and being in front of an audience. It would still provide me all of the same things that I would need to know and learn when it came to performing. So that's why I picked communication studies. And I did so well in it. When I graduated summa cum laude with high honors, and my professors loved me, and they really were motivating me to go into get my master's and my PhD so that I can become a professor of communications at UPenn, of all schools, right? UPenn, they have a great, or at least they did then have a great communication studies program at the Annenberg School of Communications. So, and I not only had the grades to back it up, and of course, the letters of recommendation from my professors, but I also had a connection, someone who literally knew, right, the head of the program, and I got all the way to getting in the interview. And when I went there, I just was like, this does not feel like this is the direction I'm supposed to go in. And I was pregnant with my daughter at the time, and I just was like, if I do this, I could do this, and I could do it probably well. But if I do this, I feel like I'm going to be a hypocrite, that I'm not going to go and pursue what it is I'm truly passionate about and what I truly love. And I also had in the back of my mind, I was newly married, about to have my first child, and it would have been a lot going back and forth. I would have to commute about maybe like 2.5 hours to go back and forth to do the program. And in my mind, I just said, you know what? I know that I can do this already. Like in my, as far as like my intellectual aptitude and capacity, right, to do school and strive and, thrive in it, that was evidence. I had some fruit and evidence to show that I could do that. However, motherhood, especially experiencing motherhood in a nuclear family unit, that is something that I was not privy to seeing a lot, right, in my family, and at least done successfully, right, in my family and people who were in my close proximity. So I knew in my heart, I felt that it would be a greater challenge for me, and that I would get more transformation in my character, and more fulfillment in choosing to like thrust myself into that role rather than, going into the university and kind of climbing up that way. And I will not, it's one of the best decisions I made. I was right, it was one of the best decisions I made. But definitely, I tell people that story, like, are you crazy? Like, why would you walk away from that? Why would you walk away from that when it comes to the status, when it comes to, the amount of money that you could make in that type of position over time. And of course, the status of the school that I would have been able to enter and have, I guess, as a notch on my belt. But I will kid you not, it definitely was the best decision I made, and it did not. I didn't feel like I lost out on that, and I think it's interesting. Like I said, a lot of people had issue with him making that statement at right a commencement, making those statements within his commencement speech when literally these women are graduating, right? It's like, could you have picked the most improper time to share that information? But I actually think opposite. I think it is one of the best places to do that, because at that moment, there probably were a lot of women, young women who are like me, right, who are presented different opportunities, and they are thinking like, okay, whether they should prioritize their family or go into a career right away. And anyone who knows to build a career, especially if you are going into, it depends on what industry you're going to, if it's a male dominated industry and you're going up and competing against them, it could take a while. It can take a very, it takes time to work your way up in those areas. And a lot of times what happens is that when you do that, you lose a lot, right? For women, right? Not for men, but for women, you lose a lot of your prime childbearing age, So I don't think it was improper for him to bring it up. One, because of the context, the school that he's speaking at is a Catholic faith-based type of school. So I think it's proper in that light. But I also think that, for me, when I do coaching, a lot of times, if I could pinpoint my audience, a lot of times my audience for me would be the younger women, or younger men, because oftentimes we lack the training, we lack the relationship skill training. And the best time to have that is when you're younger, before you actually step into, right? Like, I'm sure we have crushes and stuff like that in high school and things like that. But before you really get into a place where you can make solid choices that are really going to change the trajectory of your life. And so I think it's proper for him to say it at that time where the women are, they're at a fork in the road, whether they're going to choose to go wholehearted and say, okay, I'm going to prioritize my family first, or I'm going to prioritize my career. And considering our last conversation of what we talked about, the new look and journey of single motherhood, and you hear people like Ebony K. Williams and other women who went, hard into focusing on their career and things like that, and feeling like the higher they climbed within their professions, then the smaller the pool in their opinion or their feelings, the smaller the pool of men that, are quote unquote viable candidates for them grows smaller. And now they are choosing to do motherhood alone, and you talk to any mother, it takes a lot, it's fulfilling, but it takes a lot. And so having the support of a partner, of a spouse, is most definitely helpful, So let me read. I see some comments coming in, so let me stop and make some comments. Oh my goodness, my beautiful, beautiful cousin. I love you, Sharoy. How are you, beautiful? Thank you for joining me. Love you to pieces. Emily let me read some of the comments that Emily wrote. She said, I think being career oriented is better. Okay. Because then you have more money to take care of your family. Okay, that sounds right. That sounds like a logical answer. I think being career oriented is better because then you have more money to take care of your family. Interesting. She says, actually, I think you should balance career and family, right? And she said, she agrees with me about the thoughts that I was saying about the speech that he gave. And she says, I actually thought of his speech as a praise for housewives because they're taking care of their families and homes. Yeah, I would agree with you, Emily. I also felt like that's what it was. And I do think in the culture scape right now is that, you know, there are a lot of people who are, if they're choosing, especially women who are choosing, if they choose to take a traditional role, because it's not necessarily the mainstream perspective right now, or at least what's being perpetuated, right, in the mainstream media. And so if they do take that role, it's almost looked at like, what, you know? I remember from my daughter, when I decided to homeschool her, when I told my family members, they were like, what? Like, what are you doing? Homeschool? Like, why would you do that? You know, why would you do that? Of course, it was the first, I was one of the first. Really, I am the first, not one. I guess if there are others who do it after me, I'll be one of the first. But at this moment in time, I'm one of, you know, I'm the first who has decided to do that in my family. But we're so into the routine, like, of, okay, if the child gets to a certain age, they're going to be in daycare, they're going to go to public school, they're going to, you know, do those normative things, right? That's the normal process. And of course, one of the biggest arguments is that within the way, you know, the economy is right now, you need a two-person household, right? With inflation and all these things. And a lot of people probably are thinking exactly the way that Emily's thinking, that you need, you know, more money to take care of your family and raise your family. And I think what's interesting, and I'll probably on another podcast show you guys a clip from a wonderful author, and she's also, among other things that she is, her name is Louise Perry, and she wrote a book that basically has it states why the sexual revolution and feminism and things like that actually failed women, and actually caused so much, you know, so many issues when it comes to the nuclear family. And one of the things that she said in one of the interviews that I saw her on was that the interesting part, you know, when you know, have certain things come into play, like whether it's the pill, right, being able to have birth control, instantaneously, once that happens, it separates, right, where if having sex is now detached from reproduction, right, meaning that you don't, back in the past when we didn't have the pill, women could, you know, get pregnant, and then it became, you know, where things come into play, like the shotgun wedding, where it was now, you know, and to be, I guess, make the most sound decision would be to get married so that that child can have both parents in their life and things like that. But now when the pill comes into play, you know, now it becomes kind of almost like a social choice for men, meaning like they don't have to stay, right, with the women, because women are freely being able to be intimate and have sex. And I thought one of the interesting things she said when those things came into play to afford women more freedom and not feel like they had to be held down, right, by starting or creating families that they weren't ready for. She said as soon as the pill kind of came into play, the rise in single motherhood actually rose, right? Once it came into play, you saw a rise in single motherhood, which is like, how, right? How is that possible? This is supposed to be what is coming into play to prevent it. And she said, of course, if on the beginning stages, right, trying to make sure that something that is new is going to be effective, there are going to be, right, certain points where it's not going to work as, I guess, as efficiently as it should. So, of course, some women were still getting pregnant. So that definitely factored in. But the fact that, again, it wasn't this social stigma anymore. So now it made men actually have to be, not have to, but they were able to now say, okay, it's my choice to whether I can walk away or not. It wasn't like once more pressure where it was like if you were, you know, you impregnated a woman, you would quote unquote make an honest woman out of her, marry her, you know, create the family and build. And one of the other things that I thought was really interesting that she said that I want to use to kind of connect to what Emily said is that, you know, oftentimes you think, okay, you want the two income in the family, but as anybody who knows, who has children, who have to put those children or who has chosen to put those children in childcare, the amount of money that you pay for that child to be in childcare is like, oh my gosh, astronomical numbers, right? And then there are so much research. There's a lot of research that talks about, especially if the child is really, really young, and you put them in daycare, the mental health and the well-being and emotional also stability and well-being of the child, because when you put the child in daycare, they can oftentimes be exposed to many different, right, daycare workers. I remember my niece, she worked for a daycare, and I kid you not, it was like almost every 2 months there was a new worker. There was a new worker there. And I remember her saying how some of the clients and the parents would complain to the owner because they're like, every 2 months or a month or so, I'm seeing new people around my child. And, you know, they felt like it wasn't healthy for them, you know, but of course, what can they do? Either they can take their child out of that daycare and put them in somewhere else, and hopefully the daycare the next one that they put them in will have a consistent person there, right? Because a young child is looking to have a attachment, right? Ideally to their parents, father and mother. But when they are around multiple different people who are taking care of them, there's research talking about, you know, how that affects the emotional well-being and the mental well-being of the child. So even though what Emily's saying, like, well, if you make more money, then you can have, you know, you can be able to provide for the child. But as women, of course, that's the exchange is, again, when you go into your profession and you go into your field, how long is it going to take for you to get to a point where you're making, right, the amount of money that you feel like will be efficient enough to take care of the child? And as you're growing into that profession in that field, for us, when we graduate, if you have taken time out to get a degree, those are the most prime years for you, right, to have children with I guess, the lowest risk, right, for not only the mother but also the child. So I think that's right for many of us. That's where the crux in the road is, and what we have to, the difference between men and women, and what women have to contemplate versus what a man has to. And so that's why I think it wasn't improper for him to talk about that in that event. I don't think it slights, you know, the fact that they, you know, did all the hard work to get their degree. I think it just is, he presents another angle and for them to look at. I'm going to say some, I think I have some new comments. Emily says, I actually thought of his speech. Oh, did I read that? I think I read that. I actually thought of his speech as a praise for housewives because they're taking care of their families and homes, and therefore a praise for women. Yeah, I completely agree with you on that, Emily. I do think, but it's so interesting, I think, with what's going on right now. There's so much talk and praise for women and for how we have, you know, broken through, you know, whether it's glass ceilings or barriers in acquiring financial wealth or acquiring achievements or accomplishments in professional accomplishments in certain areas, that now when someone praises women for either being a homemaker or encourages the woman to put her family first, it now becomes almost like vilified if you say that. Because if you say that, now you're going against all of the, what's the word I'm looking for? All of the new ground, you know, and expansion of territory that women have ventured in when it comes to the area of their careers and acquiring financial wealth and having ownership, you know, of things. So I think it was great that he, you know, put it in his speech. And I also definitely, to answer the question tonight, as I'm sure you probably already know, with the examples and my storytelling of my own process, is that I do believe that being family oriented that pathway to me, I strongly believe leads to a more fulfilling life. And in my experience, I do believe you can have it all. In my experience, you can't have it all at the same time. I think with anything good or anything worth having, you do want to build it brick by brick, especially if you want whatever you're building to last. And I am a strong believer in that when it comes to balance, like what Emily said, how you create balance between your career and your family is that you have to prioritize what's most important. I don't think, you know, and I often tell people who maybe have pushback to the things I'm saying, you know, or they might say, no, don't be family oriented. And if you, especially if you place that on women, don't do that. And, you know, I'll say to them, it doesn't matter. You're going to serve no matter what, right? Either you're going to be a person who says, I'm going to serve my family, I'm going to serve my husband, I'm going to serve my children, and I'm going to serve in that space, in that area. Or when you're in your profession, you're still serving. You're serving whoever the man is that is at the helm of that corporation, or, you know, because most of the times, those are the ones that are in position. Don't get me wrong, there are women in leadership positions now, all right? But we know majority of the time, right? That's who you're serving. And outside of whoever your employer is or whoever is the creator of the company that you're working in, bottom line, you're serving, you know, to acquire a certain amount of payment and a certain amount of wealth. And my husband has said it like this, and it might be controversial. Maybe, we'll see. If somebody takes this as a bite and it goes viral, but it's like either you'll serve your family or you'll serve, right, the dead presidents that are on, right, the money that we use as currency. And I have told many different women that I've spoken to, and I'll tell you a story about this one woman that I met when I was on Clubhouse, and I never forgot her story, because it was just like, wow. And you know, when you are serving in your career, it doesn't matter how great you are at what you're doing or how much value you add to that company. You're expendable. You're more expendable to that company than you are to your family, right? And so if, you know, either something was going on in the company and they had to have layoffs, or they decided to fire someone who is in a prominent position in the company, because sometimes they'll do that because they get to pay, you know, up and coming people in the company far less. There are a lot of things, right, that happen in corporations that aren't necessarily right or fair. And I say that because I remember talking to this woman when I would open my rooms on Clubhouse during the pandemic. And I remember her coming in and telling me, you know, a story about her being divorced. And she told me the reason why her husband and her parted ways is because he could not understand her passion for work. He could not understand, you know, that it's almost like she just thrived off of that. And she told me the story that she she just to let me know how much she loved her profession and her work that she was in. She was in the area of finance. She said she was having, I believe it was her first child. I'm not certain now because it was a while, but she was giving birth to her child, and she had waited a little bit too long to go to the hospital. So she actually gave birth to the child in the hospital's parking lot. And then right after she gave birth to the child, she received a call, because she had her cell phone on her. She received her call from, someone in her company wanting her to be able to kind of facilitate a meeting. And do you know this woman was actually going to take the call? She was going to take the call. It was only because her mother was there, because she was going to come with her to kind of support her in giving birth to her child. And her mother said, "No, you are definitely not taking that call. You only get this moment once. You will never get the moment to take in and embrace, one, what your body just miraculously did. Two, to be able to bond with your child, your newly born child that has come into this world." And so she stopped her. But in me talking to her, she was so what's the word? Confident in feeling like only if her husband could understand, and only if he could have supported her in the fact that she just wants to entrench herself, into her work, because it is her passion. And for him, he wanted, her to be more into, family oriented. He wanted her to be more, involved and engaged at home. And she said, "I tried it, but I can't do it. I was miserable." And I remember saying to her just what I said to you guys, that, for that company that you work for, you're expendable. You're more easily expendable to that company than you are to your family, because your position and your place there with them, right? If you or your husband, God forbid, something was to happen and you guys would pass away, how that would affect your children, how that would affect your partner, it would affect them more greatly than any kind of position that you would either lose or leave from a company. They would find someone else to replace you. No matter how good you are, you are expendable to them. And I think what's interesting is when it comes to the relationship space, right? Again, I said, you as a woman, you're going to be serving. Either you're going to be serving your employer, or you're going to be serving and get the reward of whatever finances that you attain through your work, or you're going to serve your family, right? And so some people often will say, and especially if they've had bad relationships, if they've been in toxic relationships, and so they give the advice to, go with your career, get your own, because at least when you do that, your career, what the reward is, right? You know that you're going to get paid bi-weekly, weekly, etc. So you can serve in that way because your payment is guaranteed. It's easily seen, right? Whereas if you're in a marriage and you're in a relationship and you serve your husband or you serve your family, unfortunately, we live in a culture where they don't see the immediate reward. They just feel like they're serving and being taxed, and they can't quantify or calculate what is the reward that they get in it. And I say, when you're in a relationship, right, it's a faith type of walk. You can't enter a relationship without faith being your primary currency, because we enter into this relationship and we enter a certain way, and then life challenges, the test of time and change come to us, and it brings different things right out of us. So we're supposed to evolve and grow. So the person that you met is going to change, rightfully so. Hopefully they will change for the better, and the dormant skill sets and characteristics that are laying dormant inside of them, those storms or challenges that you guys weather together, then you guys will grow in a better way, in a more improved version of yourself. But when you're serving, I think in a relationship or in a marriage, it's fulfilling because you automatically are serving without expectation. I say in my book that I wrote that the only way to experience true authentic love is to serve without expectation, right? Versus if you're in your career, I expect to put in this much work and I expect to get this much payment from it, right? So yeah, you're serving. You can calculate it, you can quantify it. So there's a certain amount of, right, where you're not going to maybe experience some of the life lessons and the gems that you would get out of serving in your household, or your children and your husband, or if you're a man, your wife. You're not gonna be able to kind of get those gems, and I think that's unfortunate. And you kind of see it, the effects of what's going on in society, going back to what we talked about the last time with Ebony K. Williams and women now choosing to go into single motherhood, like literally choosing it. It's not that I entered a relationship and maybe I didn't make the best choice, and then I ended up being a single mother. No, these women are choosing to go into single motherhood, and sometimes for not, just because they have not felt like they have met a man who they could date up with, or a man who has a certain status or a certain amount of wealth. They cannot foresee themselves starting a family with a man, who has possibly good character or who is climbing up the success ladder, or, they cannot see it. So they're like, I would rather do this on my own. I would rather be able to have you experience motherhood and make the decisions for the child, and not necessarily take into consideration what process or how that's going to affect the child not to have their father in their life through all of the different changes and stages of life that they will go through, and I think that's just another reflection of how the selfishness kind of impedes, right? The same type of, and I know I'm probably going to get some pushback for this, but it is kind of selfish in a way, right? Let me explain what I mean by selfish. When I say selfishness, I mean that we can be selfish when we look at something or make a decision from only one angle or a very small, right, perspective instead of a broad, holistic perspective, or not thinking with a collective mind state of how your choice is going to cause ripple effects and it affect the whole. So that's what I mean by selfishness, right? And we as people are very, in our nature, we have a self-preserving nature, right? Whether you want to call it your ego, it is built and functions to preserve ourselves, right? Call it maybe the survival, trying to survive and things like that. And so anybody who's entered a relationship, especially if you're in a marriage, that it's always, right, a test of dropping the ego or dropping the selfishness so that you don't see things from just your angle, but be able to include, right, expansively your partner if you have children, your family, and see how those choices are going to affect the whole. So again, when you go out into your career and you serve and you already can calculate what the reward is going to be, and you go and you serve in that way, yeah, you provided the service, but there's expectation on the end of the service. Like, I did my job, you need to pay me, period, point blank. Or I did my job and I want to go, promote to the next position, things like that. Whereas when you're serving in a relationship, it's not like that. I might serve in one area, my husband might serve in another, right? It's not this linear, very specific type of reciprocity. And sometimes we're looking for that, and it causes a lot of confusion in the relationships because we look for equal, right? Like, you match what I do, and it doesn't really work like that in a relationship. I guess what would be similar in a corporation and in a family, right, dynamic is that it's an interdependent system that has different positions working for one aim and one goal or one vision, right? Whether it's you have the vice president, the president, the secretary, the administrative assistant, right, the clerical workers, all those people are important to the system, right? They're all important to getting the functioning of the company, right? And we understand that in that area, but when it comes to in a marriage sense or the dynamics and the differences between men and women, sometimes that gets murky, right? It's like, no, we have to be the same and it has to be equal, but that's really not how relationships or even just how we function, right? As a community, as a society, it doesn't work like that. It's interdependent parts working together, and those parts are not the same, right? I always say it here that unity is created by interdependent, right? Unequal parts working together. If we're all the same, we're all the equal, then there's no really need for unity. But if we are different and we're not equal, then we can learn how to embrace someone's difference, right? Or we can be able to honor the person who's the head CEO of a top company and also honor the person who's the sanitation worker who's keeping our streets clean, right? Or who's mopping the floor, because you can understand their importance of what they offer, right, to society. I think many of us probably were able to hone in on that or see that during the pandemic when you had, the quote unquote essential workers were the people who were working in the supermarkets and cashiers and things like that who were able to, right, for us to get the food that we needed. And of course, the people working in hospitals and things like that. But that provided some space in times of where, right, unpredictable things are happening, where the importance of those workers, and sometimes they would not necessarily be acknowledged in that way. So I definitely think what he said in his speech is pertinent. It's a pertinent conversation for today, especially for women, because I do think that a lot of young women are being fed these kind of glamorous lies, of life, of being, right? Whatever it is, boss babe, girl boss, and being at the top of her game, and forsaking a lot of essential things that would provide fulfillment in our lives, and kind of demeaning the position of a woman who chooses to pour into her family either first or primarily, and then from serving her family, then might pour out into the world with her other skill sets. That's how I am. I started off doing that with staying at home with my daughter, and it helped me have the opportunity to kind of figure out what it was, or how I was going to allow what I was passionate about to unfold, because I am multi-talented. So I took that space and time to kind of, figure out how I was going to build, my business and do. But and that's what I do now. I perform, I songwrite, but I also do the coaching. And when I do the coaching, in actual events, I merge my performance, I sing, and then we dive into the topics and things like that. And so I found my little space there, but by no means my family still and will always come first. And that is where I pull my strength from. That's where I get my strength to be able to pour out into other areas of life. And I think that's not normatively right now in the current day modern culture taught in that way. I think they're, teaching young women that if you do prioritize your family, then you're not going to have space to build your career. You're not going to have space to, find success in whatever professional area that you want to go into. And that's just not true. one area, family planning for women does have more time constraints on it. Whereas you can build your business at any age. I will never forget another wonderful woman, beautiful woman, a businesswoman at that. She's like a family to me. She's a friend, but she's, we grew close over the years and she became like family to me. And I will never forget, I always share this story because I thank God for her every single day because she helped guide me in making the choice. Her one powerful statement that she offered to me helped to kind of put things in the proper place to prioritize what was important. And at the time I had already graduated. I had decided that I wasn't working. I wasn't working at that time. And I remember feeling so down about it because I didn't realize, reflecting, I grew up around a lot of strong women who were working women and they made it happen. They got it done. And, some of them were, a lot more were single than married. And so I would see them getting things done and doing what they had to do because, right, they didn't have husbands in their lives. And so I think I had to realize that I was taking that mentality, even though I, was newly married, that I was still putting so much value on my ability to bring finances into the household. And so I was feeling really down about myself. And I remember she had a business at that time where she was handling like some concerts and workshops. And she graciously gave me, contracted me and allowed me to go on, be a part of her team for the events that she was doing. And then we stayed in the same hotel room. And so I was sharing with her some of, the things that I was feeling and what I was going through. And I remember telling her, like, I'm kind of feeling down, right now because I had recently graduated and I was just like, I'm not working right now. And I'm not feeling too, good because my husband is the breadwinner right now. And I don't feel like I'm adding value because I'm not bringing finances into the household. And I remember her looking at me and telling me directly, Sharla, I wish that somebody could tell me, could have told me what I'm about to tell you. She said, I am an intelligent woman, and she is. She actually was roommates with Michelle Obama. She went to Yale, amongst other schools. And she said, I have acquired degrees. I have created multiple businesses. I have brushed shoulders with a lot of high status people. But I will tell you what you are focusing on right now as far as your family and building your family and becoming a mother, that is important and that's essential and it should be primary. She said at any age, you can build whatever business it is that you want, but you cannot have and build your family and have the child that you want at any age. And at that time she was a more mature woman, kind of past the age of her ability to have children. And she wasn't married yet at that time. She's married now. And I just remember looking at her and really taking in what she said. And what she said made sense, and it took the pressure off of me, one, kind of dealing with myself and making sure that I wasn't looking only in one way and one angle of the value that I can offer to my husband as his wife and things like that it wasn't just finances. And he had said that to me many times, even though I was still struggling with it. So it helped me kind of drop the weight of that. And then it also helped me to understand that, what she said, it was right. It's like, yeah, I can start a business. You can even go back to school at any age that you want, right? But in society, it makes sense because usually they want young workers, right? They want young workers so that they can kind of honestly squeeze those years of your youth out of you, so that you can just dedicate it wholeheartedly to your career and to building their vision, honestly, right? If you're working for a corporation, unless you're, venturing into entrepreneurship and building your own vision. But most of the time, it's not that. Most of the time, people get their degrees and they work for other corporations that are more established. And so you trade the youth for building whatever finances that you have. And I think a lot of people probably have the same mind frame as Emily, where it's like, okay, well, once I do that, then I can have my family and I can be able to take care of them. But, you talk to anybody who has a two-person, right, who are working in the household, and you tell them how much, or you ask them how much they're paying for childcare, and how it's like, okay, the idea is, the theory is that we need this money to be able to take care of the kids, but you're really putting the kid, or the child or children in childcare. And so the job of tending to or serving the child has to be done no matter what. But now, instead of either the mother being at home taking care of the child, then now we're putting that child in daycare, and now the expense, right? It's costing us not only valuable time with your children, but also the cost. You'll be surprised, when you have a traditional household dynamic, how much money is saved because you have one, person in the household. So it's an interesting, conversation, and as always, complex and layered with the things that I introduce usually on the live. So, but that's my piece. That's what I definitely feel about it. I can honor what he said, and I think that there's a space for it, because I think in modern culture, there's not a lot of people who are, kind of encouraging traditional roles as much as modern, right, relationships. So I think there's space for it, and I think it is proper to talk to the people who are literally in the midst of having to make that choice. So I'm sure, I would love to have talked to or interviewed some of the women who were in that audience to see what their thoughts were, and see if it caused them to reflect, and to think on, in different ways and in a different perspective. So that's my piece. I definitely agree with him. I definitely think that it is more fulfilling to be family oriented. Now that can come about in many different ways, it can come about in many different ways. But I think there's no way to, if you're a woman, to not consider, if you are a woman who wants to have children and wants to have them biologically, not necessarily adopt, or want to have to maybe go through a more rigorous process, extensive process, a process that has more risk for you as well as the child, if you choose to delay it, to have a child at an older age, that's something that you're going to have to kind of contemplate, if that is something that you do desire. And it would be hard to deny the truth that the best time to do that, the most optimal time, is in your younger prime years, because of not only the quality of the eggs and the chance of the child coming out, being okay in all areas and every way, as well as how taxing it will be on your body. So thank you guys, as usual, for coming in here with me and having this conversation. A lot of pleasant surprises, especially my beautiful cousin Sharoy, and always good to have Emily in here. And of stars, oh my goodness, I'm just seeing that you came in here. I don't know if you're still here, but thank you for popping in. And Lachey loves you too. Thank you. All of the people who popped in, Justin, Just Be Empowers, Luxury, Divine Motivations. Thank you guys for popping in. And please, for those of you who are catching the replay, definitely flood my feed. Let me know what your thoughts are. Let me know what your, thoughts are on it. And, I always like to hear different perspectives. I like counter arguments because that's how we get to a place where we can dive in, and we can get to the truth. So definitely let me know what your thoughts are. Thank you for tuning in, whether you tuned in real time or you're catching the replay. And as usual, if you want to hear more and you like what you're hearing, tell somebody about the podcast. I come on every Thursday and Sunday evenings at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. My YouTube channel is Forever Friends Academy, same name as the show. And subscribe, like, comment, share, etc., so that the message can be spread. All right, so I will be back on Sunday evening with you guys with another relationship Sunday scenario for us to kind of talk about. All right, so until next time, as I always usually like to say, always remember to live, to love freely. Bye.